In fact, do you want to know what one of the greatest forms of patriotism was for the Greeks?
What's up?
Tax evasion.
I mean,
Based. The amount of sass in this room is starting to affect the building itself.
there's palpable sass.
Yeah.
And then from there, launching their own kind of ethnic cleansing upon society.
Woo!
Do you have any idea how many arguments I've had in my shorts for things that people are just screaming at me
I mean,
as time went on?
I would also kill an emperor who cut off my balls and forced me to be a soldier.
And yes, they did. They absolutely did. That's kind of the whole point of what they were trying to do, to stabilize the empire through committing cultural genocide, which that was kind of part of it.
Woo! Anyway, we're talking about the Balkans.
And somehow we went back to Rome.
It's pretty that so much medication for women was just a means to make them unconscious throughout history.
Let me tell you about the history of the chainsaw.
Lobotomies. Onto something. First it was the piss, now it's the births. What's next?
The Romans were taxing pee?
Gabby, if you need Claritin, let me know.
Does that make you drowsy?
No, Claritin is non-drowsy. You should definitely take it now.
I like that we had allergy meds that made you drowsy, and then collectively as a country we went, ooh, these allergy meds that make you drowsy would be great if they could just make you drowsy.
Well, like Dayquil and Nyquil
Yeah.
and shit.
And that's how we came up with ZQuil. They were like, what if we just used the NyQuil to treat insomnia? All right.
That's
Anyway.
why Unisom, the big thing, is it's a sleeping medication. It is literally the medication that is prescribed to pregnant women for nausea. I shit you not.
hilarious.
That is the general medication prescribed to pregnant women because you can't be nauseous if you're asleep.
That is very true.
You know, it's pretty that so much medication for women was just a means to make them unconscious throughout history.
Let me tell you about the history of the chainsaw.
Lobotomies.
What?
Oh, he doesn't know about the chainsaw.
Holy shit, wait, you don't?
No.
Gabby, do you know about the chainsaw?
You told me about it when I was having my C-section.
For anyone who is curious about this and what we just said,
No,
I explained to my wife the history of the chainsaw while she was having her
They
C-section.
didn't use chainsaws for C-section.
No, it wasn't for
Not for
C-sections.
C-sections.
It was to cut open and connect both holes, if necessary, in order to widen things, in order to allow the baby to pass.
Okay, I understood that,
To be
like,
fair, this was catastrophic scenario.
Yes, this
why a chainsaw?
Because it was more effective than a scalpel.
yes. So this was a scenario where back in the day, you know, they had a whole thing where there is that phrase in medicine. I say phrase. There's that scenario where the husband is asked, "Do you want to save the wife or do you want to save the child?"
Yeah.
That it's not.
This was
common.
typically in a situation where you couldn't save the wife.
Yes, and it's
Okay, well,
not.
that's at least
Yeah.
somewhat better.
And it's not common as much nowadays. It
would
still
hope
does.
not.
It still does happen for more so asking the couple for what they would like to do for the risk. And
Yeah, it's like ahead of time. You know, if something goes catastrophically wrong, we can only save one. Who do we save?
yes, but back in like the 1700s, that was a very common question that was asked a lot, and it was the husband standing outside that would determine what happened.
The mortality rate historically, up until like the last 200 years, it only started to get better 200 years ago, was still pretty bad, was like 33 to 50% for infant mortality. And for,
Well, to be fair, that
mothers
wasn't-
didn't survive nearly as often as they do anymore either.
That wasn't in childbirth. It was within the first.
Yeah.
It was within the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Was what it looked at for infant mortality rate. They would be like anywhere between 10 to 30% in some areas.
But
depending.
childbirth deaths were much higher than they are now, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
as
no,
part of that.
I knew infant mortality rate dropped a lot. I didn't. Everything I learned about birth in terms of, like, the tax on the woman, I cannot fault people for not wanting to have kids.
Are you telling me they're taxing our births now?
Actually, they are.
The Romans were onto something. First it was the piss, now it's the births. What's next?
The Romans were taxing pee?
Yes. Literally. Hold on, wait. Neither of you two are familiar with that here in the first. Okay, yeah. There was a tax on piss at public urinals specifically. So they would siphon off pee away because it was used for ammonia production.
Okay, all right. I was thinking that what you were saying was when you went to pee, you had to hand somebody A drachma.
No, that's Europe. That's just Europe.
That's true.
Yeah, that's just...
Europeans are just, they don't get it.
It's
They think
literally-
they have it so good. We have free bathrooms, free water,
To
free
be
ketchup.
fair,
It's literally
public
in the
bathrooms are
name.
becoming less and less common in the U.S.
It's because people can't behave.
Guys, what are you talking about? It's literally in the name.
What?
European.
Oh, yeah, there we go. All right, well, anyway, as I was
Welcome to
saying,
History Unhinged, everybody.
as I was saying earlier, Balkanization could save the United States.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah. Well, they don't know that.
Yeah, I know they don't know that.
You want to explain to them why?
No.
Fair enough.
I will.
The title of this episode is literally Balkanization Could Save the United States, and it's just the opening sequence is talking about chainsaws and hoo-haws.
Chainsaws and Hoo-Haws, great band name.
Yeah.
All right, so
Oh,
Welcome to History Unhinged.
that's what I was trying to say.
that is a Russian feminist band if I have ever heard one.
This show is just consistently me trying to stay on topic and just getting derailed.
But the funny thing is, half the time you're derailing yourself.
That's
That's my job.
okay. All right.
Getting railed?
No, derailing him.
It sounded like a
You
sigh.
guys heard the room sigh, right?
Yeah.
It sounded like a little gas, like
I heard it more
whatever.
like a hiss, but
It was
yeah.
a little weird.
Yeah, but it did sound like the room was sighing at whatever we were saying.
After everything I've been talking about the last week, I don't like that.
The amount of sass in this room is starting to affect the building itself.
There's palpable sass.
Yeah.
So, Balkanization will save the U.S. We were just kind of joking about this before the show, and then we were like, no, that's actually a really good topic, but I figure, should probably start by explaining what Balkanization is, because I think a lot of people know the term and probably don't know the in-depth history of it. I don't know a ton of the in-depth history, but I generally understand it, and I guess I'll be the jumping off point for this.
I'll say the baseline standard, which I represent, is we know the Balkan Wars existed. That's it.
That's an interesting point now that you mention it, but I do have a question. When did the lighting change?
It's just something I'm trying out. It's a little psychoactive element. It may or may not have to do with the bubbly that you drank earlier.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're just feeding me drugs. Got it. Anything? How did our clothes change?
It's so we have a new wardrobe department that the intern is kind of just like testing things out.
How are we paying for this?
FlexiSpot ads.
Oh, well that makes sense. I mean, that is what the chair is it not?
I think all of the chairs are, in fact.
And didn't we just set up one of the E7 Pros downstairs in the little studio?
We did. That's what I spent this afternoon doing, yeah.
Yeah, you looked really hot and sweaty while you did it. I was very aroused.
Despite the effort that it took, it really wasn't about the desk being put together that took so much effort. It was more the will to pull myself out of slumber and just drastic tiredness from the cold I'm still working on just to get here. Once I got here, the desk was actually pretty easy to put together.
As somebody who was up writing until 6 a.m., I get it.
Yeah.
I, too, had to drag myself out of bed and make myself an eggnog latte.
They never said it was easy to live life this cozy.
No, they did not. They did not. But it is easy to live life this comfortably in our beautiful FlexiSpot chairs.
It really is.
And unfortunately, we only have the one C7 Max, which is, what they're paying us to advertise today.
Yes.
But we only have the one, and it would be unfair for, only one of us to be that comfortable. We all have to settle for a high level of comfort rather than the supreme level of comfort offered by the C7 Max and its swiveling arms and the footrest and the enhanced ergonomic back support, all of those wonderful things that come with the C7 Max chair.
Yes.
Yeah. Steven, how do you feel about it? Oh my God, he's so cozy, he died. And, disappeared like Obi-Wan. His clothes are on the floor right now. They're just, it's fascinating.
Does that mean from this point forward he's actually a forced ghost?
I believe so. I hope he haunts me.
If he's going to haunt anybody, I feel like it's you.
Yeah, that's fair. Gabby, sorry, you're going to have to deal with it. But yeah, I mean, aside from the chairs, which are, again, very, very comfy.
Yes.
There is a reason that we keep taking FlexiSpot's chairs. We honestly like the chairs more than the money.
That's the thing. We keep asking for the chairs and the desks more
Keep
so
asking
than the
for
money
more
from
chairs
them.
and more desks. And speaking of the desks, I use one at home. It's the first one they ever sent us.
Yes.
And it has been phenomenal. I have not needed a new one. I've had that that desk for 3 years.
I think we now officially have a E7 desk, some form of it, in every room in this office building.
I believe you're correct, except for up here, mainly because it's just not, it's meant for a single person to work at the desk and not for 3 girthy men to sit around.
Could we theoretically?
We could.
Yes.
We could, but
But
it would probably be better to have 2 of them.
exactly.
So I mean, guys, if you want to, or if you guys want to make a big podcasting desk, just saying, we would take it. But for now, I am perfectly content to do my writing. And again, I was writing for literally, I think, 18 hours yesterday at that desk, and it was comfy the whole time. I was very happy.
And that's the most important thing. If you're able to marathon write for 18 hours, that's a good testament to the quality of the materials that you're working with.
Also, one of the best parts about it is that if I'm sitting there and sometimes I got to watch a video, I got to watch sometimes I had to watch an entire documentary. I have different positions for if I want to be typing versus if I want to be watching. I can lean back, I can raise up my desk, I can watch comfortably, and then I can pull it down a little bit, a few inches, type, do my thing. And then if it's time to relax and play some video games, I can change the height again, and I'm happy. I'm all my different positions at the touch of a button.
And it really is a phenomenal ease to be able to make those adjustments. And
phenomenal ease.
Really helpful for your posture.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I probably got to get better about this.
Same.
We definitely are going to have back problems.
Almost certainly.
Yeah, but not as bad as they would be without FlexiSpot.
They are saving us.
They are saving our backs. Yeah, so I mean, if you guys want to be as cozy and comfy as we are as we sit in our chairs, you can very easily become so by going to FlexiSpot's website at the link in the description and using code C730 to get $30 off your C7 Max. You can also, if you're looking for something a little bit cheaper, there are, of course, the other C7s, or if you're looking for a bit more budget-friendly, you can get the C5, which is honestly quite comfortable as well.
Yeah, so I think
we have a couple of those.
I was going to say, yeah, because every chair that they've ever sent was actually increasing in levels of comfortness.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the cool thing too, is it does, the base level is comfy. The max is downright luxurious.
Yeah.
They've also launched the new C7 Morpher, which I presume we will acquire at some point.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm wondering, is it going to, do we get to be a Zord?
I mean, I think so. At the very least, it may be able to morph this studio back and forth between different setups.
Yeah, I would love to be able to combine 5 of these with all of us sitting in the chairs into one mega chair that we can use to fight alien monsters in Japan.
Are the chairs essentially going to be forms of Transformers?
Zords. Did you not watch Power Rangers as a kid?
No.
Okay, we've got to fix Aiden. We're going to Clockwork Orange him. This is not part of the ad. I'm going to Clockwork Orange him into watching all... at the very least, the one movie where all the Red Rangers come together, because that one's just baller. There was something about that as a kid. You're like, oh my god, this is my. You remember at the end of Avengers: Infinity War when they all come out of the portals and everything? It's like that, but better.
I see.
Got it. Production quality. I mean, come on, Marvel. You can't match. Who the hell made Power Rangers?
I have no idea.
It was some Japanese company. Anyway, yeah, I mean, there's the C7, the chairs and everything, but then there's also the E7 Pro desk.
Yeah, I mean, as we've said, the E7 Pro is a phenomenal desk. We love using it. We recommend that you would use it because, we think if you love this show, you're probably going to love the E7.
You can even sit and pose for it and be drawn like one of someone's French girls. I mean, it has the structural support to hold well over 250 pounds.
So it could be an easel or it could be the stand.
Exactly.
It's ready to go. And if you want to grab an E7 Pro for yourself, then you can head to FlexiSpot's website, which we have the link for in the description. And you can use the code YTE730 to get $30 off of your E7 Pro.
Yes, this is why I read the scripted videos. He's getting better. He's working on it. He's getting there.
I haven't really had to do much reading in the last several years other than...
You read more books than I do.
Oh, dude, I
guess you're probably not reading them out loud.
Yeah, and I really haven't touched many books in the last couple of years because I just haven't had the time.
It's okay. You haven't touched me either. So anyway, I'm sure Steven's getting very uncomfortable in the spirit realm, but we should...
To be fair, you two did cuddle last time.
That's true. We should probably resurrect him.
That's a good point. Steven, welcome back to life.
Yeah. Wololo.
Yeah. I'm going to be the one to establish background on this. You're going to then jump into the hypothetical of what it is you want to build.
Yes, the Balkan... So one thing that you need to understand about the Balkan conflict is it's one of the only times in modern history that American soldiers have not been boots on the ground, but have been athletic trainers on the ground. I talked to my recruiter when I was joining the National Guard a while back, and then I got medically separated before basic. It was a whole thing. Anyway, He was telling me that when he was stationed in the Balkans, I forget exactly which part. I feel like it was Kosovo.
Likely, they have a statue of Bill Clinton in Kosovo,
Yeah.
and like it's hilarious.
Yeah,
It's understandable why, but it's hilarious.
it is. But he was telling me that first of all, they spent most of the war playing like Halo, or not Halo, but whatever came before Halo, whatever was a shooter back in the day. He wasn't there during the war.
Hold on, no, it's the 90s, so
Yeah, he wasn't there during the war.
early versions of Doom then?
Probably. He was there in the early 2000s, so like as a peacekeeping force, I guess, if I'm remembering all of this correctly. But he's basically said that they would like play video games and eat snack foods and then occasionally like have to go around and just be in a place, but they would always wear trainers.
That's
Like,
hilarious.
a lot of soldiers who were in the Balkans, even in the 90s, swapped out their combat boots for athletic trainers because they just made more sense in urban warfare.
Yeah. Yeah, I would get that.
So he was telling me about that. I thought that was hilarious. I also think there's a number of really funny stories from the Balkan War of American pilots just outclassing not Yugoslavian, but like whoever they were up against.
Largely Serbian.
Yeah, Serbians just outclassing them completely. Just 2 F-16s taking on squadrons of half a dozen to 10 enemy fighters and coming out unscathed, which is just crazy.
Yep.
Like the U.S. Air Force.
We've
had to use our Air Force so little in the last 20 years that I don't think people generally have a good understanding of it. Because when was the F-22, right?
Yeah, I think that was the late 90s.
Late 90s?
And the big thing is people don't understand the difference in generations because so you know how you have like first generation fighter,
Yeah.
second generation, third.
Does that only apply to jets or would like
It is specifically
Okay.
for jets, sort of. Yes,
like
kind
the
of.
F-4 Phantom would have
Yeah.
been
But
first or second?
well, here's the problem: the generational system varies depending upon the country, and even within the country, the different people that are talking about it, because people have different definitions of what exactly constitutes as a specific generation.
Yeah.
But collectively speaking, people acknowledge that the majority of modern fighters are 5th generation fighters now. And the big
The
thing that
F-22, the F-35.
Wait, hang on, really
the
quick.
big thing that people are looking for are what will be the 6th generation fighters.
Yes.
And there's this whole thing with like China now.
China's
doing
got like 3 or 4 now.
Yeah.
They just keep adding one every few months. They're like, and now we have another fighter.
Wait, additional
It's a whole
context to that is that the first F-22 was built in 1996. We haven't needed to build any more since 2011.
No.
None of them have been shot down.
No, they were just. There's also a thing where there was this huge push for modernization efforts of 4th generation fighters to 5th generation, which created the 4.5, and the 4.5
Was getting that like Super Hornets?
Yeah, kind of. So this is where everything was getting. They were taking 4th generation fighters and they were just updating them with the modern equipment that would have gone on 5th generation, thus creating a 4.5 because it was significantly cheaper to upgrade 4th gen than to create a whole bunch of more 5th
Well,
gens.
especially when F-15s
and they weren't
were still
necessary.
winning dogfights.
Exactly. F-15s were amazing, so they weren't.
Aren't they like 104-0 in dogfights?
I don't know what the exact
It's,
statistic on it.
it's some crazy number like that where F-15s. I think it's overall, but especially in American hands, have never been shot down.
We're now
have never
talking
been
about
defeated.
planes.
Yeah,
There
104
is going to
now.
be so many hyper autistic plane people that are just going to be like nitpicking every single
for
thing
sure.
that we say here right now.
We are plane appreciators, not plane enthusiasts here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, last episode was a prime example.
Yeah, we did get to talk about World War II planes that we know a little bit more about. Also, the P-47 has a special place in my heart, mainly because of Blazing Angels. But yeah, so the Balkans themselves, there was a reason that we needed to use fighter jets over them, which was that after communism, everybody was like, hey, that thing we kept doing over in the Middle East where we put a whole bunch of countries together or a whole bunch of ethnicities together into one country, that worked so well because it hadn't stopped working yet. That worked so well, let's do that in the Balkans. And they created a Yugoslavia that they called Yugoslavia.
Oh, that happened before. Like this was well before any of that because the idea of Yugoslavia was something that existed from pan-Slavic nationalism that
Oh, I
arose
understand,
out of
but
the
like the
1800s.
actual functional country.
Yeah, and that is because that wasn't even from outside European
I
powers.
was making a joke.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. But the funny part is like when people talk about the Balkans, oftentimes they think like, oh, the Europeans shoved all these different groups into one like country. No, they did that themselves, and because they wanted to actually try and attempt to do this because it was the Kingdom of Serbia that ended up becoming the dominant state within it, as the rest of the Balkans were
Most of this was previously part of the Austro-Hungarian and the Ottoman empires.
So that was going to
Yes.
be my question is like, for a lot of people, the cultural understanding, I feel like, for most who are not inclined in historical and geopolitical, areas, is where even are the Balkans?
Oh, okay, yeah. So
Probably need to specify that before going into
good
anything.
point.
Yes,
Yeah.
here.
So the Balkans are a mess for a lot of reasons. One of them is where they are. They are at the southeastern extreme of Europe, and the northwestern extreme of what would be considered Asian culture through the Turks. So we're talking about everything north of Greece and south of Romania, basically.
Romania is also largely
Would you consider Romania Balkan?
It is largely considered still part of the Balkans.
Weird.
Yes.
Okay, so I
So
guess
throw up a map.
if-
we're
so
talking about like south of Poland, east of Austria, west of Moldavia, and north of Greece.
Yeah.
Between the Adriatic and Aegean, but not the Greece part.
I don't know if
Croatia
Moldavia.
Balkan?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. So Croatia, and then it goes all the way technically up to like Slovenia.
Got it. Yeah. So basically that little southeastern corner region of Europe is the Balkans, and that's centered on like the mountains there.
Yeah.
So but the thing is, throughout history, that area has gone through a lot of hands because it's kind of the nexus point of Europe, where the Black Sea is, and where the Black Sea and the Mediterranean meet. So what you have is it starts off as basically most of the people there are one of three groups. They're Dacian, they're Celtic, or they're Thracian. The Thracians and the Phrygians are related as well, and they're down in Anatolia. But what are you going to say?
I was going to say, can you explain those groups a little bit more?
There's also all the
Not very well.
there's also all the Illyrian groups, but even then, that's
Yes, they're on the western side.
that's divided into many different subgroups, and Illyrian, even of itself, is just a name for the region. That's like if we say, yes, Middle Eastern, but then it doesn't denote all the varying different groups within it.
It's basically everything that wasn't Greece at the time that Greece was important.
So like Dacian and Thracian, those were the two, and then what was the
So
other
that's
If you want to look at Dacia, Dacia is pretty much it. If you look at a map of ancient Dacia, it is almost an exact outline of Romania.
one? Okay.
Thracia is. Thracians are confusing to me.
Thracia, if you have this here, because the Thracians and Dacians were related in here,
Yeah.
but the Thracians would be more like
I know where they were.
Yeah.
I don't have a good grasp on the distinction between Dacians and Thracians.
It's
is what
like
I'm saying.
the issue when describing things with the Illyrians. It's an overall name that was granted to it specifically by like the Romans.
What made the Thracians different from the Dacians in a material way was that they adopted a lot of aspects of Greek culture from being so close to Greeks.
Okay. And then
The
third one
Dacians
was-
kept a bit more tribal aspect, whereas the Thracians adopted some more Greek aspects.
and the third group was Baltics.
No, that's completely different. Illyrians, and I was saying the Celts as well.
The Celts, okay,
Because the
yeah.
Celts, basically, it was these Balkan groups, the Dacians, the Thracians, the Illyrians, and then the Greeks to their south, and then the Celts came through. There was a big Celtic migration around 300 BC that brought Celts over from Central Europe all the way into Anatolia, so modern-day Turkey.
There was literally a pocket in the middle of Anatolia where there's just a Celtic kingdom. Like, it's surrounded on all sides by different groups, and it's just like an isolated pocket of Celts.
Galatia, like Galatians in the Bible, is written to that part of Anatolia
Yeah.
because it was called Galatians after the Gauls,
Okay.
Celts who
got
came
it.
in.
That was throwing me off because I felt like you said Celts, but I didn't
Yes.
realize we were going that far back in history to where
Yeah.
they hadn't even gotten to what we consider Celtic areas.
Well,
now.
I think you need to go back that far
Let's
in order to
describe
explain how long this
So
area has been a problem.
2,500 years ago.
Well, you know how the Middle East has always been a problem?
Yes.
The Balkans have also always been a problem.
They've always been a problem.
Because you've got these Balkan tribal groups up there that are, again, we don't know a ton about them. We're learning more through archaeology, but as far as the Greeks were concerned, all of these people were just barbarians.
Exactly.
So back then, that's all you really know is these people aren't Greek. They're a little bit more like Celtic and Germanic, and the Slavs aren't on the scene yet at all. There's some weird ancient proto-Slavic thing going on out in the dense, dark, creepy forests of Ukraine. And they're worshiping bear gods. They did worship bear gods. That is a thing I have confirmed. The whole Russia has had a thing for bears for a very long time. So anyway, the Macedonians come in and they're like, Well, a lot of this is ours now. Not the whole thing, but a lot of it. And then the Romans come in and they go, well, all of this is ours now. Not actually all of it, like basically all of it. Up until a certain point where, who was it? Name started with an A. Or where was it? The big battle that the Dacians smoked the Romans in.
Not Adrianople.
It was before Adrianople. I might be mixing those two up in terms of where it happened with who it happened with. But the Dacians did do the Romans had a tough time breaking into Dacia.
The Danube was largely the border for the majority. They did go beyond it occasionally for excursions, but the Danube was largely considered the border.
It was kind of the same issue with the Rhine and with the Firths up in northern Britain. So where you just the Romans were like, they don't seem to come across the river, so we'll just stop at the river. Because they learned their lesson in the early AD period when they tried to go across the river, and it went poorly.
How poorly are we talking?
Was it 2 legions?
I thought it was 3.
2 or 3 legions were completely destroyed.
Wait, this isn't
Arminius.
Teutoburg Forest.
Teutoburg Forest.
okay? Who am I thinking of? I feel like was it Octavian?
It was during his reign.
Okay, because I'm thinking of somebody who is only remembered. We talked about this ages ago. Only remembered for his failure, even though he was a really good general up until that point.
Varus?
Might have been Varus. Anyway,
Probably Varus.
I was wondering if
Varus
there
was the one
connection there.
leading that expedition.
Oh, so this is Varus.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Varus was the one leading the expedition into Germania, and a guy named Arminius spoiled his plans. Anyway, we're talking about the Balkans.
Somehow we went back to Rome.
So Rome comes in, Rome gets the Balkans, and then Rome goes away because the Huns get the Balkans. And then after the Huns have the Balkans for a little while, the Turks get the Balkans. And then after the Turks have the Balkans for a little while, they just have the Balkans. And then basically you get all the way through up until right before World War I, when Austria-Hungary manages to claw back a lot of its Balkan territory that it had lost during the Middle Ages. And you kind of end up in a weird spot where I think the Ottomans they did still have a foothold in Europe that went beyond Constantinople.
Yes, they did.
But
So
it wasn't as big as it had been. They used to control up through Romania, everything basically to the doorstep of Austria.
literally all the way up to the doorstep of Austria, they controlled. So despite the fact that the Emperor of Austria was like the king of Hungary, they owned a literal sliver of northern Hungary. Every other part of it was already taken over by the Ottomans. And the big thing that ends up happening there is that when the Ottoman Empire is receding and it's losing territory, and by the time that the First Balkan War actually breaks out...
We cannot forget the arrival of the winged hussars.
Yeah.
Big moment.
Correct. Well, I mean, yeah.
What year was that?
16 something?
1692.
Okay. I always think that that's earlier than that.
No. Also, it was 20,000 cavalry, but it was not 20,000 winged hussars.
Yeah. Well, I thought
Maybe
it
like
was
3,000
I thought it
winged
was
hussars.
40,000 cavalry, and it was 3,000 winged hussars.
It was, one of those two.
something like
Somebody
that.
also have
Biggest
it on.
cavalry charge in history.
Yeah.
But the first thing that ends up actually happening is that the Ottomans are gradually losing a lot of their hold on power. The state is decaying, and they are kind of forced to grant bits of more autonomy to the varying different provinces. Like you have the I think the Bey is the term where they have this here, where it's a ruler or a provincial leader of an area. You have like the Bey of Wallachia, you have the Bey of Serbia, and you have like the Greece itself as a province. And then in the 1800s, I think it is 1832 or 1833, when Greece gets its independence and it breaks away. But when we say, oh, Greece gets its independence, we're not talking about modern Greece. We're talking about it is literally
Like the Peloponnesian
it is literally Athens and then everything below Athens. Every single thing to the north of that, from Thessaly heading all the way up to
For those unfamiliar with Greek geography, everything south of Athens is not much of Greece.
no.
It's basically Sparta and Corinth.
It's probably like 30% of modern day Greece, if that, I would say. And so the Greek state is now independent. It is the first Balkan state to actually be free at this point.
I don't think the Greeks would appreciate being called Balkan, but continue.
Still part. It is. So the Greeks are not Balkan, but they are considered a Balkan state, like from the Balkan region.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Not culturally Balkan, but it is a Balkan state in terms of geography.
So, Steven, tell me, who are the Macedonians?
Do you have any idea how many arguments I've had in my shorts for things that people are just screaming at me between the actual Macedonians and then the Greeks as to...
Modern the Greeks, the Macedonians weren't Greek, but they also weren't what modern Macedonians are. And modern Macedonians do this really funny thing where they claim Alexander the Great.
Yeah, and they were culturally Greek. That's the thing. And I say culturally Greek because they had a combination culture of varying different aspect of Illyrian, Thracian, and Greek.
They
all in one.
The Illyrians, or the Thracians and the Illyrians adopted certain things about Greek culture. The Macedonians went, we would like to be Greek.
Yes.
Like Alexander the Great was tutored by Aristotle. They were 100% trying to be Greek, and, potentially other things with Aristotle.
Literally.
It's hard because Plato was against banging your students, and Aristotle was Plato's student, so Aristotle wouldn't have necessarily wanted to bang Alexander the Great, but he might have.
Well, I was going to say, so Plato and Alexander the Great knew each other?
Probably not. I believe Aristotle was pretty old by the time he was tutoring Alexander.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plato was like early 300s.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he was still alive at the time, was he not?
No, he would not. He lived from like 440 to 370.
I can't remember the exact time frame on that.
Somewhere around there. He basically lived in the latter half of the 5th century and the early half of the 4th century.
Okay.
Yep. So, God, where was I in this year now? Because now we were talking
Greece.
about
Greece
Aristotle
got its independence.
potentially not banging boys. Okay, so that's where it goes. All right, so Greece gets its independence. The first course of action that ends up happening in this is the state is stupidly, horribly in debt, which is a historical thing for Greece. If people think that Greece and its modern day problems are weird, no, it has literally always been this way. In fact, do you want to know what one of the greatest forms of patriotism was for the Greeks?
What's that?
Tax evasion.
I mean,
Based.
Yeah. So there was this whole thing where
based and olive pilled.
based on olive. So it's not a false statement to say that tax evasion was actually a Greek pastime and a form of patriotism because what they would do is
It's not going to look good in an audit.
I was going to say also, didn't we establish that Diddy was Greek as well?
Yeah.
There are good Greeks and there are bad Greeks. I think you were talking about how in the early 1800s, Greece won its independence.
Yes. And
About the same time Texas did.
Yes. And so this is prior to the independence of Greece. Tax evasion is the big thing, especially over the course of the 1700s, where you would have local officials
like us.
So they would have tax collectors from the Ottomans that would go around, collecting taxes. And oftentimes what the Ottomans would do is they would use local officials in order to be able to collect these taxes. Tax farming, essentially. That's the whole purpose. You give out a contract to a guy and said, hey, we need X amount of money. And as long as you collect X amount of money, we don't care what other money you also collect.
Yeah.
So they would do that. But also they would contract people to go and investigate the harvest and whatnot, collect taxes off of that. And the Greek farmers and people and merchants would go and basically bribe the officials and be like, oh yeah, hey, I know that my tax is supposed to be, I'm going to use drachma, even though that's not accurate for here. I know my tax for this year is supposed to be about 1,000 drachma based on my harvest, but if you could just report that I had a really bad harvest and I only got a third of my estimated yield that I was supposed to, I will pay 300 drachma in taxes and I will give you 100 directly to you.
Yeah.
And they would only pay 40% of what they were supposed to owe, sometimes nothing. And in that whole thing, it was done for two parts. One, screw the Ottomans. We're going to retain our own influence and weaken them. So it was done. And also it was just straight up corruption that they agreed. So it's both. It's literally both aspects of we're doing this to spite the Ottomans and also we want more money. It works hand in hand. Anyway, that problem does not go away after the Ottomans are out and the Greeks now own their own country. The exact same issue still takes place when they're independent. Oopsies. So the Greeks, much in the same way as people, after the United States really got its own independence from Britain and people were like, yay, we're free from paying taxes to the British. We don't want to pay taxes to the U.S. federal government. That. Why would we want to do this? Because you need taxes to run a country. Unfortunately, I hate it, but you need it. That's kind of how it works. So Greece is spiraling into debt, and who is placed in charge of the country? Is it a Greek? No, it's a German.
Oh.
It's a German. The first king of Greece was a German that was appointed as king of Greece by a coalition of European powers that didn't want a completely independent Greece. They wanted something that was bound to the European power structures. And their way that they decided to do this was by appointing a German who really did not want to be the king of Greece as king of Greece.
It's also really funny because, like, Greece is so small. It would really not have been a problem to have an independent Greece.
Yeah.
So it is in debt, mind you. And this state,
Wait, Greece is in debt?
yes,
Oh my god.
it has never not really been in debt. So Greece, in fact, I'm trying to think about this. I don't think at any given point in its history that Greece was ever actually free of its debt. Like, it never, the original debt from independence was just always there. So it is in debt. The Ottomans are severely weakened by this point. And then gradually, Serbia gets free, Wallachia gets free, Romania, like, it is free. And I think Wallachia unites with Romania, and that's, or like for the early state, and that's what, or Moldova, and it creates Romania. That's what actually ends up happening there. If I might be speaking out my ass, not actually remember that correctly. But either way, by the time that the early 1900s comes about, it is 1912 or it's 1913. The Ottomans get horribly embarrassed in a war against Italy because Italy launches its invasion into Libya, crushes the Ottoman forces there, and sweeps everything through. The Ottoman forces are horribly embarrassed, and it is at this time that a united effort of Greece, Serbia, and Romania all launch simultaneous invasions into Ottoman territory and beat it in the span of, like, I can't remember if it was like a year or whatnot. I say Serbia, Bulgaria. That's what it is.
Doesn't feel so good when the shoe's on the other foot, does it, Turkey?
Yeah.
Just imagining Gulf War edits, but instead of HW saying withdraw from Kuwait, it's withdraw from Libya or face a coalition.
Yeah. So if you look at the map and what was going on here, the Ottomans essentially had to defend from like 4 different separate fronts. It was a small front for each one, but their forces were split amongst all areas, horribly outdated, just
And keep
terrible.
in mind, the Ottomans of the 1800s were not the Ottomans of the 1600s.
God, no. There was a broken backwards thing, and every single time they tried to modernize their military and change how things work with the Janissaries, the Sultan suddenly wasn't in charge anymore, and a new guy got put in charge. Go figure. The Janissaries were like the Praetorian Guard, but worse.
I mean,
as time went on.
I would also kill an emperor who cut off my balls and forced me to be a soldier. That would make me upset.
Didn't realize eunuchs were still in play here.
The Janissaries weren't eunuchs.
The ones they abducted from Greece were.
So there were some cases where people could be, but they largely weren't eunuchs. At least if I recall correctly, that's the ones that were turned into palace guards. You're thinking of the guard of the harem. And even then, I'm pretty sure that was it. Am I drawing a blank on this here? I
Pretty
swear.
sure I was pretty sure the Janissary Corps were generally eunuchs, but I might be mistaking that with palace guards. That's possible. It's not my area of expertise.
No,
I'm just shocked we don't mention
Janissaries were not typically eunuchs. No.
Well, they were slaves.
Yeah, they were slaves, but the thing is, the reason they were Christian. So here's why it didn't happen. They were converted to Islam. So the young Christian boys were taken, educated in Islamic households, and converted to Islam, and then from there they were then trained as soldiers.
Got it.
So essentially, they were taken from a young age and then brought up, educated, and brainwashed to turn into perfect slave soldiers. That was the idea. The ones that you're thinking of here were the eunuch guards of the palace, that they were, you had the white ones from the Balkans that were typically Bulgarian and Hungarian and whatnot, and then the ones that were actually guarding the palace or the harem itself were typically the black eunuchs, and they didn't have their balls chopped off. They had everything chopped off. They were clean shaven, which we talked about in a way earlier episode.
The straws, right?
So
the straws.
they used the straws. They were the Kool-Aid pouch to pee. So Anyway, the Ottomans get absolutely humiliated in the First Balkan War. And the funny part about it is that although you have this first alliance that is designed to beat the Ottomans, they are also competing with one another because it's basically a free-for-all that is determined, hey, you can get whatever territory you take in this war. It wasn't divided cleanly of like, hey, all right, you're going to get this territory, you're going to get this territory, and you're going to get this one. It was, all right, guys, we're all going to attack the Ottomans, and whoever gets that. Which means it was a race to Thessaloniki. That was the name that I was trying to remember. Thessaloniki was one of the key ports that the Ottoman held that was historically Greek, but the Bulgarians really wanted it. Because they wanted access to the sea, and there were old claims where, as part of the Bulgarian Empire, because there have been, I think, 3 major Bulgarian empires in history, and one of those was really big as they almost took out the Byzantine Empire. That was a really big time when that happened. But they go in and try to race to there. The Greeks get there first. And this is a really frustrating thing for the Bulgarians because they want it. And Bulgaria was called the Prussia of the Balkans at this time because I think at one point it was either 10 or 20% of the entire Bulgarian population was in the military.
Okay.
It was incredibly militarized. There was that phrase describing Prussia of Prussia, like some states have an army. The army of Prussia has a state.
For context, what is the rough percentage of people in the United States that are part of the military?
Less than 1%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's... And we have a pretty sizable military.
We do. In fact, in terms of percentage of population in the military, I think the highest on Earth is North Korea, Eritrea. Technically, some of the ones with conscription, like South Korea and Israel are, but in terms of like active forces or that are able to be drawn immediately, I'm pretty sure it's like North Korea and Eritrea. Eritrea is one of those really wild ones where they actually have modern slave soldiers to this day, where every single member of the population, male or female, has to go into the military. They are then required to serve 2 years, I think it is, but your contract or service could be delayed effectively indefinitely by virtue of what you potentially owe. Oh no, you didn't complete X number form that we needed. Looks like you're going to serve another year in the military. Oh no, it looks like your family may be having trouble with taxes this year. Yeah, you're going to serve another 5 years in the military. And there are people who have effectively been unpaid slave soldiers of the Eritrean state for like 15 to 20 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane.
And it's bad. I probably need to do a whole other video on Eritrea. I did one a while ago, and I'm probably going to have to do it again. Anyway, Balkans, because I keep on getting distracted with all this. They absolutely humiliate the Ottomans. Bulgarians, however, are very upset that they didn't get everything that they felt like they deserved. So what do? What? They start the Second Balkan War almost immediately after the first one and very quickly invade their former allies, Serbia and Greece, trying to take back this territory. Their initial invasion is somewhat successful, but it stalls out as people are exhausted after the war. And then what happens immediately after that? Well, the Romanians decide to jump in on the conflict and invade the Bulgarians from the north, and then the Ottomans are like, hey, we could take back some of our territory. And then they form a very, not quick alliance necessarily, but they make an agreement with the Greeks and the Serbs that allow them to then invade Bulgaria again. And they take back a bunch of their territory. So Bulgaria went from kind of sizable to taking a huge amount of territory, but they wanted more, to they end up actually losing all that territory and ended up smaller than what they started out with after the first war.
Wow.
Or sorry, before the first war. So they lost all the territory they took plus additional territory. And this is the key reason as to why Bulgaria was so pissed off that it joined the Central Powers in World War I to then try and take back all that territory again, and why they invaded Serbia. So when the Austro-Hungarians were stuck in their invasion to Serbia, they were being held back, which was genuinely impressive that Serbia was able to do this for a while. The only reason the Serbian state collapsed as quickly as it did is because the Bulgarians invaded from the other side where it was completely unprotected.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's the long history of how the Balkans got so incredibly up for a brief time, and why it is that, yes, they always kind of had a problem with each other, but that time period over the course of just before World War I, heading all the way into World War II, because remember, the Bulgarians sided with the Axis, and they joined them for World War II as well, and they invaded Greece. So...
And then Greece put up one hell of a defense.
One hell of a fight. So to describe all that as a very broken would be an understatement. They all kind of hated each other, and that is only describing Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey right there. That's not even mentioning what was happening with Yugoslavia.
Yeah. And then later on, Kosovo is like, we want to be a country. And Serbia and Bosnia didn't take that well.
No, none of them really took the things well. Essentially, the
It didn't
idea...
help that Kosovo was basically just a city.
So the idea afterwards was that Serbia was essentially was guaranteed by the Russians, Slavic brothers.
Yeah.
That was the whole idea for it.
Which is really funny because that whole group is ethnically a complete melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my point in starting as early as I did, is you've got actual Balkans, like people, the Balkan culture that then gets swamped by the Greeks and then the Romans and then the Ottomans and then the Germans, and it's just over and over and over and over and over.
It's a hodgepodge of different things.
They're not ethnically anything but Balkan now.
Well, you bring up
And they
Russia.
can't agree on what Balkan means either.
You bring up Russia, and I was curious about, after all of this happened with World War II, how did the Cold War and the existence of the Soviet Union and its, tangential states affect
There was a
things there?
communist state
There was
of Yugoslavia.
under Brosif Tito, but it needs to establish as to how that even happened in the first place. And the key reason as to why it occurred is because Yugoslavia was formed out of the ashes of the Austro-Hungarian Empire when it collapsed, as the varying different Balkan ethnic groups, from the Croats, the Bosniaks, you had the Montenegrins, you had all the different groups that they kind of wanted their own state, or they wanted to be free. And this is one of those big things, that there was a plan within Austria-Hungary to federalize the system, sort of. This was actually a plan. Archduke Franz Ferdinand wanted to Balkanize the Balkans, because the idea was that in giving more autonomy to these entities, that it would provide more stability for the empire, as there would be a lot more self-rule versus the top-down structure that they had been utilizing. In fact, funnily enough, because people on the Austrians for this the whole time, the Croatians were screwed throughout pretty much all of their history, because the last time there had been an independent Croatian state before the modern day and age was literally the 1100s.
Wow.
After that point, the Croatians were stuck in a personal union with Hungary, where the king of Hungary was also the king of Croatia. And technically speaking, they're two separate countries, but the king of Hungary would basically determine all the policy within Croatia, and the Croatian nobles were subservient to the Hungarian ones.
That's also how England and Scotland worked for much of the 17th century.
So people think, oh yeah, well, the Austrians were trying to Germanize the Balkans because they made it so that German was taught in the schools. They were abusing the Hungarians. They wanted the Hungarians to Germanize, and that's how it was going to be. And yes, they did. They absolutely did. That's kind of the whole point of what they were trying to do, to stabilize the empire through committing cultural genocide, which that was kind of part of it. Woo! The Hungarians were doing the exact same thing, and no one ever talks about this outside of history circles, but in the same way that Austria was trying to Germanize Hungary, Hungary was trying to Hungarianize the rest of the Balkans. They did this. So there was a lot of bad blood between them.
Would you say that they were hungry for more power?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, they did. Because that was the big thing. They wanted their own independence, and they wanted their own state, and they wanted all of this because they thought that they should be the ones that were in charge of everything. Yeah, it wasn't clean. That's the thing. This is one of the scenarios where everyone is just kind of in their own way, and that's how it rolls. So Croatia was absolutely screwed, and over time develops this very fiercely independent attitude where they want to be free from all of it. And that is what helps lead to the rise of the varying different fascist movements within Croatia. This is where you get the Stasi, if you're familiar with that term, which was when Germany launched their invasion of Yugoslavia, which I needed. God, I keep on skipping past this because I haven't even established Yugoslavia. These varying different Balkan states all teamed up with one another under the flag of Serbia in order to be able to band together. because in a world of great superpowers, which, I mean, in the aftermath of World War I, you still had England,
I mean,
France,
I'm a little
and
confused.
et
I've been
cetera.
told that Albania was in charge. And reliably informed by every Albanian on the internet that Albania was in charge of everything from the beginning of time.
Nope. No, it was not.
Julius Caesar, Albanian. Alexander the Great, Albanian. Hannibal Barca, Albanian.
Nope.
George Washington, believe it or not, Albanian.
Nope.
Was FDR Albanian?
No.
Oh, but the royal family of Albanian was Egyptian.
Wait, what?
Egyptian or Arab or Coptic or Greek?
So Arab Egyptian.
Okay.
If you would say this here, because it was the so King Zog was the guy
What
who
a
was
name.
yeah, absolute legend
Gotta
of a
call this
figure,
guy,
by the
like,
way.
He's got to have an epithet like the Destroyer. Like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You got to be Zog the Destroyer.
Yeah.
Legend of a figure, by the
Zog
way.
the Malevolent.
But Albania is largely
Zog,
Islamic.
Magnanimous.
But the royal family was related to the like some of the Egyptian viziers. I can't remember what his exact lineage is, but yeah, the royal family of Albania was Egyptian, and he started out as dictator of Albania before basically declaring himself king. Interesting. That happened.
So why did they Balkanize?
We could go. I know there's so much background that has to be covered with this. Anyway, they all unite in order to be able to basically.
anyone's ever like most of the viewers are probably like me learning about all of this for the first time.
I am also learning about all this. For the
I'm
first
sorry. I'm sorry to everyone in the comments.
time. No, but this is important.
Oh, this is good. This is good. Also, I talked a lot yesterday, so this is kind of nice.
There you go.
We're
yeah.
going to get to your hypothetical from this. So they unite under the banner of Serbia, which was the largest dominant Balkan power among all of that. And so the king of Serbia became the king of Yugoslavia. And it was not a federal system, but it was something to where each province did have their own autonomy within it. And this is something that it was still very contentious because there was arguments over who was being prioritized. Oh, yeah, the Serbs are going to be taking all the positions. Oh, no, it's the Croats that are trying to dominate the north, and they're not going to follow the rules, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of disagreement, but the infighting isn't necessarily bad here. Mm-hmm. But there are problems and issues and assassinations and all kinds of shit that happen. World War II rolls around. Germany and Italy launch an invasion into Yugoslavia, quickly crushing large parts of it. The Balkan conflict breaks out, or a Balkan conflict breaks out, where Croatia breaks free, and the Stasi, the fascist element within Croatia, sides with the Germans, and basically becomes the police force of German-occupied territory in the Balkans.
Okay.
And they start committing a lot of war crimes.
So to be clear, Yugoslavia forms before World War II.
Yes, it forms in the immediate aftermath of World War I. I think it's like Yugoslavia, I think, formed in like 1919 or 1920.
What was the government?
A federal,
Okay.
a federal kingdom.
Gotcha. So a constitutional monarchy?
Yeah, it's essentially a constitutional monarchy where you have the king of Serbia, who is the king of Yugoslavia. That's their dynasty. And then on top of that, it's a semi-federalized system where, yes, the main government is there in, I cannot remember the capital of Serbia. Sarajevo.
I believe.
Like the capital there, I think, is there in Sarajevo. And then beyond that, there's the regional capitals, as each one has its own kind of local legislature.
Oh, no, Sarajevo's Bosnia. Hang on.
Okay, then it's going to bother me in here. Where was it? Capital. Belgrade. Yeah, why can't I remember that? So
I always mix those two up.
why don't I just do that? But anyway, yes. The state collapses into very different infighting, and it is then occupied by the Germans. The Stasi are used as basically the fascist police force to do whatever the hell they want and be able to control things. And as the German Reich begins to collapse towards the end of, 1944, heading into 1945, and all the varying different territory is getting freed now, it turns into essentially a bloody free-for-all as the different states are trying to, I say a bloody free-for-all, the different ideological groups are now competing with one another, the fascists versus the monarchists versus the communists, etc. And the entity that takes things over is Joseph Tito.
What a name.
In fact, I think his name
Great
is
vodka.
Joseph Bro Tito.
No, you're kidding.
Joe Bro Tito.
Bro Sip.
Oh my god. Oh my god. You tell me his name was Joseph Broseph Tito? You
Hold
cannot
on.
be telling me this
I'm
right
gonna pull
now.
this up in here now.
Have to.
You cannot.
Josip Broz Tito. His name was Broz.
A literal bro.
I kind of want a shirt with him on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
he was really popular.
People are going to be like, oh, you're a communist?
I
You're going to
wonder
be
why.
like, no, have you seen this guy's name?
Yeah.
Like,
Let me see a picture of this guy.
Yeah, I'll pull it
Joe
up
Bro
in here
Tito.
right now. The
Tito.
dude, absolute legend. He
Oh
looked.
my god.
I know.
That's a man.
His look as a style, he is Command and Conquer. Like, he is either the primary character or villain in Command and Conquer,
yeah,
for anyone
for sure.
familiar.
Joe Bro Tito, absolute stud.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of hard to say best communist leader.
Yes.
Yep. So,
Also, unironically, potentially the best communist leader
Yeah.
in history.
yep.
One
So,
of the only ones who didn't commit genocide against his own people, or at least all of them.
sort of, yeah, kind of. That was the big thing, is that, like, he didn't try to genocide the population, but he was willing to use as much military force as necessary to keep them down and together. So, the Axis invades Yugoslavia in 1941, and obviously I talked about the Croatians and the fascist group with the Stasi, etc. Tito is the leader of the communist guerrilla resistance. And they,
Gorillas?
oh, yeah, a ton of them. Yeah.
Island or lowland?
Oh, and they went bananas. They really did, because they beat the Allies.
I gotta say, really quickly here, communist guerrilla resistance is so much cooler of a name than what they went with in The Man in the High Castle.
What was the name?
The Black Communist Revolutionaries or something.
I cannot remember the name, but I remember there was a group that specifically.
It's like, that's just not. Communist guerrilla resistance goes so hard.
Yep.
That goes so much harder.
So let's see, where was this in here? War goes on for several years. Tito is the leader of the communists. Mind you, the actual government of Yugoslavia had fled the country at this time. So he is pretty much
Bye-bye.
because they
We're not
fled.
dealing with
And,
this.
and so this guy ends up leading the resistance in here. He quickly becomes, over the course of the years, the most powerful entity within the entire, because there's different resistance groups.
From being a man to an entity.
Yep. Yeah, he does. It does. And, God, I'm trying to go through all this here. On the 12th of August, 1944, Winston Churchill would meet Tito in Naples for a deal. On the 12th of September, 1944, King Peter II, who was the king of Yugoslavia, called on all Yugoslavs to come together under Tito's leadership and stated that those who did not were traitors, because the government of Yugoslavia, in exile, agreed to basically work with the communists in order to do this.
Great idea.
And
Can't go wrong.
And the thing is, they were actually fairly popular in all this. And this is the crazy thing. You know how at the end of World War II, it was pretty much a race to Berlin, where the Soviets were trying to rush in to take as much territory as they could to help the elections go?
Yep. And the Americans were like, we'll let the Soviets die. Mm-hmm. We are perfectly willing to let the Soviets die doing this. We don't need to.
Because Joseph Stalin promised that he was going to give fair and free elections to the states that arose out of the ashes of World War II, and he did not do that. In fact,
he did not.
There was only one time that he did, and that was Italy. That was the one time that Stalin actually did not try to interfere with an election.
How'd it go?
Was it just because Italy was way too far outside of their
No,
power projection?
it was because the communists were projected to win the election,
Oh.
And
and they didn't. That's the thing. So they were.
I will say that doesn't surprise me, because when our friend Norman went to Italy for a study abroad thing for a semester, he did text me and say that the only things he'd heard about Mussolini there were vaguely sympathetic. And Italy currently has a right-wing government led by, like, isn't she like Mussolini's granddaughter or something?
Is that the person who was in charge? That
She might
she's
not be
actually
in
the
charge
granddaughter? I thought, no,
anymore.
that's a politician that was the
Yeah.
granddaughter. And I think that was the head of the previous.
There was something like that. Like there was a major politician in Italy recently who's like the granddaughter of Mussolini.
listen, if you make the trains run, people are gonna be a little bit more forgiving.
But yeah, no, the Italians didn't hate fascism. They hated losing.
Yeah.
Again, base.
So-
Hated being on the wrong side of the war.
Yeah. Alessandra Mussolini is an Italian politician, television personality, model, and former actress and singer. She's been a member of both the houses of Italian Parliament and also European Parliament. She's known for being a member of the Mussolini family, the granddaughter of Benito Mussolini, and she has been a member of the European Parliament for Forza Italia, which is the right wing.
I mixed her up with the person who was actually elected.
Yeah.
The prime minister position or whatever it is over there. But
Yeah.
no, Italy and even Italian Americans were not particularly anti-Mussolini. The turn against Mussolini came when the war went bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And well,
The fascists won in Italy the same way they did in Germany.
sort of Italian Americans that were
Italian
especially
Americans were more anti-Mussolini
Yes.
than Italians were.
And this largely came because a bunch of the Italians that came over fleeing from Mussolini were affiliated with the mafia that he was cracking down heavily upon.
Yeah, there was
That was the thing.
There's basically like a second wave of Italian immigrants in the 1920s and 30s. The main one is like the 1890s. That's when my family came over.
Yes.
Like is the 1890s. That's when the Italian communities in like Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, those areas, that's when they formed, is that 1890 period. Then you get another wave of Italians who are fleeing from Mussolini, but they're not necessarily fleeing from Mussolini because they don't like fascism. They're fleeing from Mussolini for other reasons.
Yes.
But also, it's very important to recognize and to understand that people, when they think about fascism as an ideology, and I'm not defending fascism here, I don't think it's a good.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah,
and
don't
I
like
kind of
fascism.
explained that with the MIFO bills from last time in one of the episodes, where it literally the entire fascist Nazi economic system was literally a Ponzi scheme that only worked as long as they kept on taking more money from other people.
Fascism is economically left wing. Like it's culturally right wing. It is economically left wing.
It's the sum of horseshoe theory. It has extreme aspects of both.
Yeah, and I don't like fascism. I want to make that clear. It is important to understand the distinction between Italian fascism and German fascism, because German fascism was extremely ethnocentric. Italian was not. You can't have ethnocentric Italian anything because Italy isn't. Italian is not an ethnicity; it's a nationality. I mean, you've got Southern Italians who are genetically completely different from people in Tuscany.
Yeah.
Much down south, you're going to have much more Greek, much more North African, some Sicilian, some Norman even. Up north, you're going to have like Frankish mixed with some other Germanic groups, and then an old Italian stock that was also there.
Let's not forget the other Italian territories that were heading over into the Balkans.
Yeah, so there's Italy when it formed in 1862? 1872?
No, 1867.
I feel like Italy
No,
was
it wasn't.
1862 or 1861. Germany was 1872, right? Or am I getting these backwards?
1861.
Yeah, okay. So Italy's 1861. That it finally unites. Yeah, by the way, guys, Italy was not a united country until 1861.
Yeah, what was it previously?
A whole bunch of different duchies.
You had the primary one that created it is
And
the
Kingdom of
of
Naples and Sicily. down south.
So you had the Kingdom of Naples and Sicily. You had the Kingdom of Sardinia Piedmont, and Sardinia Piedmont is actually the one that would unify the rest of the Italian states, because
It's ironic because neither of those places are in Italy.
this is from where it has it, from northern Italy, where it was about half the territory of Sardinia Piedmont, you could say was not really Italian, so to speak, but it was one of the cultural centers specifically of Italy. And it would go and unify the territory during a period of, what's the Italian term? Risorgimento? Risorgimento?
Yeah, it's reorganization.
Hold
but
on. I didn't need to look this up.
It's basically reorganization, but in Italian.
Risorgimento, or unification. Yeah, that's what it is. So there was that huge period of boost in nationalism across Europe at this time. The same thing we'd see with like the unification of Germany. So the unification of Italy was actually one of the defining things that helped push for the unification of Germany, because Italy unified just like 6 years before Germany did.
So remember that pesky little question, how did World War I happen? This is why there's not a simple answer, because this was part of why World War I happened.
So, God, where was I?
Also, then there's like 14 battles of the Isonzo.
We were like middle of last century Balkan territory. We were
Right, Tito. We were talking about Tito and how. Okay, so
Yeah, the point we were getting to was
and why Stalin didn't interfere with the elections and whatnot. Okay, so what was so incredibly impressive about this is that Stalin interfered with basically everything except for Italy and except for Yugoslavia. The reason why he did not interfere with Yugoslavia was because the Yugoslavs beat him to the punch. The idea was that, you know, any of the territory that were taken over by the Soviets or liberated were more like put under new management, so to speak. But the Yugoslavian communist partisans actually threw off the Germans and the Italians before the Soviets ever got there.
That's crazy.
So the Soviets show up at the border. There's now a whole new government that is already in charge. Country is completely formed. Everything is done. And the Soviets can't do anything about it because they can't.
World War II.
This is at the end of World War II. And so they can't invade or do anything to secure the border because the border is already secured and Tito is in charge. Stalin doesn't really like this, but Tito is communist, so, you know, he'll probably work with the Soviets. But Tito goes and says, hey, I am communist, but I am my own communist. I am not under the sway of the Soviet Union, and I'm going to do things how it is that I want.
Wait. But I was told communism is a global movement of workers working together. This sounds to me like a government taking top-down control of the industry in its country and redistributing wealth and everything, and I feel like there's another term for that.
Well, there's a difference.
It's like, man, it's so crazy. Communism and this other thing are just so similar in every way in practice, and I just... Man, all the communists hate that other thing, too.
The ideology of communism that you're specifically describing, where it's the global revolution, is not Stalin.
I know.
That is Trotsky. So Trotsky was the one who preached for the global revolution, and that is, so Trotskyites, what they specifically would advocate for. There's other variants of communism that is like syndicalism, which syndicalism is the French variant of communism that got popular among the lower classes, but never actually managed to do anything. There's a lot of different groups. Anyway, Tito throws off the yokes of power. He unifies the country behind himself, and he establishes his own dictatorship that then he rules for the next 40 years. Stalin tries to assassinate him multiple times, and they catch the assassins every time, to the point that there is an actual famous letter where Tito sends this to Stalin, and it says, and I'm paraphrasing this, hey, stop sending assassins. The last guy you sent was so incredibly incompetent. If you send another assassin, I will send my own, and I'm only going to need one. And he sends that to Stalin. Mm-hmm. No more assassination attempts. Doesn't happen. This is also because Stalin ends up dying over the course of the early 50s, and then there's the period of de-Stalinization, so it's a completely different thing. But anyway, Yugoslavia then serves as this separate, it is communist, but it is a separate thing from the Soviet Union and works as almost a kind of intermediary between the rest of Europe and the West and the communist Eastern Bloc. So it trades and is more open to, but still restrictive. Yeah. Not as restrictive as the Soviet Union, but more restrictive than it would be otherwise if it wasn't a communist dictatorship. This is where it gets really funny, and I'm going to move past this very quickly when I say this, because I know I've been talking for a long time. Do you know who the best partner of communist Yugoslavia in this time was and what they became obsessed with? You know how the rest of the world was like, yeah, Hollywood. Hollywood is you know, that's like all this culture, and American movies are everywhere. In Yugoslavia, it was Mexico.
Really?
Mariachi bands and Mexican telenovelas
No way.
were huge in Yugoslavia, to the point
amazing.
that, I kid you not,
That's
look
phenomenal.
up Yugoslavia Mexican telenovelas. They were incredibly popular because the telenovelas, especially over the course of the 60s and 70s, focused a large period on the Mexican Revolution. And the Mexican Revolution had a lot of what you could argue as communist aspects, where it was land distribution, saving the peasants and the proletariat, etc., but it was using different terminology. So they loved the Mexican Revolution because it was seen as an older extension of the communist revolution. And so Mexican culture was huge in Yugoslavia. They loved it. Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine Tito sitting there listening to a record of mariachi music.
Literally, it was one of the most popular types of music was mariachi music in Yugoslavia. No, I'm not kidding. Anyway,
You're driving down the street in a big communist, parade, and it's just
Wait. No, this makes so much sense because one of the I can't remember which like modern country it is, but my buddy Rex went to school at Utah State, and they had a lot of foreign guys on the tennis team that came in. And
yeah.
one of the guys,
the term was UMEX, is what it was called.
so good. One of the guys, so Rex always would listen to. There was like a radio station like 98.7 or 97.5 or something in Logan, Utah, where Utah State is. It's just all Mexican music. And he just like thought it was like fun and great to listen to. And one of the guys from the tennis team lost his mind when he got into the car with Rex one day. He was like, "No way you're into this music. This is like what we listen to at home like all the time." And yeah, I can't remember which country it was, but it was from this region. So that explains
probably
that.
Bulgarian guy.
Yeah, I think it might have been. Yeah. So that's hilarious.
Amazing.
Yep, UMEX was a style of popular music. In the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, which incorporated elements of traditional Mexican music, such as mariachi and ranchera. The style was mostly popular during the 1950s and 60s, when a string of Yugoslav singers began to perform traditional Mexican songs.
That's so.
And it was incredibly so. In the immediate post-war period, Yugoslavia did not have much of a film industry, and the majority of films were imported from the Soviet Union. But following the Tito-Stalin split of 1948, because they didn't get along, Soviet films were no longer shown in the country. At the same time, due to ideological differences, Yugoslav President Josip Broz Tito did not want his country to import American films. As a result, he turned to importing Mexican films. The fact that many Mexican films of the Golden Age glorified the Mexican Revolution, depicting ordinary Mexicans rising up against the oppressive Mexican state, made Mexican films revolutionary enough to be shown in Yugoslavia. And they got really popular, because quite literally, there was no other film. You weren't allowed.
Yeah, the only other thing you could go is French, but like they're not doing that.
No, they're not. So, long story short, from all of this, the split happens. Tito is the guy who's in charge of Yugoslavia for 40 years. He controls the country with an iron fist, and he is popular. Like, he is actually popular, but he is popular through his iron fist beating anyone down that possibly shows a degree of separatism. When he dies, he is the only thing that is holding Yugoslavia together. And almost immediately after, the varying ethnic groups start fighting one another, as this is right around the time, of course, that the Soviet Union is decaying and collapsing. Communism is collapsing everywhere. And this is what then goes into the Balkan crisis.
And that leading into the 90s of the
that leads into the 90s, because he
So-
dies in like what? I think it's 1989 or 1990. I'm trying to pull this up here. When does he die? Josip Broz Tito dies in, where is that? 1980. Okay, no, actually, it was earlier than what I thought it was. He dies in 1980, and then I'm trying to remember for what the government happens immediately afterwards. Let's see in here. Trying to go out to this. Oh dear God, there's so much history.
I would imagine a lot of it is essentially just a progression toward instability.
Exactly. There was no personality that was able to take over afterwards that was as strong as him to be able to maintain the country together. There wasn't.
That makes a lot of sense. So it would seem, and especially considering the time here, we have two options. We are at the time we would normally go to Patreon, but I feel like we need to establish what happened in the 90s in the Balkans to then go to Patreon so Mattis can explain why we need to Balkanize the United States.
Yes!
So how about we, for the last portion of the YouTube segment, we'll go through what happened in the 90s in the Balkans, lay that foundation, and then Patreon is your solution
Sounds
to
like a
all
good
problems in the
plan.
United States.
We have basically baited the entire audience all the way through this of like, this is the title of the video, Balkanizing the United
I
States.
intended to talk about this.
Let's be fair though.
I took over for an hour to do.
Let's be fair though. having a thorough understanding of what the hell has been happening in the Balkans for the last thousands of years is relatively important, not only to what you're going to describe, but also having a general understanding of history overall.
It is good that we didn't spend an entire episode specifically going over Rome again. Rome was mentioned, but because it has to be mentioned specifically for the time period. So, we covered an area that is different in comparison to what we usually have done.
Yes.
That's nice.
Yeah, 100%. So, instability occurs throughout the 80s as a result of Tito's death.
Yes.
What tips the scale into war?
It is, oh God, when I'm trying to draw a blank here in the first place as to what exactly does it. It is, yeah, it was literally because the state started advocating for independence. Exactly like Croatia, Montenegro, etc. All of them wanted independence, and they started to advocate for breaking apart. And the communists were weakening, the nationalists ended up largely taking over Serbia, and then from there launching their own kind of ethnic cleansing upon society.
Woo!
During the initial stages of the breakup of Yugoslavia, the Yugoslav People Army, the JNA, sought to preserve the unity of Yugoslav nation by eradicating all nationalists in the governments of the republics, because they were varying different republics. Yugoslavia, they say the Socialist Federated Republic, because each individual state within Yugoslavia was their own little republic. They were subservient overall to the overall federal communist system, but they were their own republics. However, it increasingly came under the influence of Slobodan Milosevic, whose government invoked Serbian nationalism as an ideological replacement for a weakening communist system. As a result, the JNA began to lose Slovenes, Croats, Kosovar Albanians, Bosniaks, and Macedonians, and effectively became a fighting force of only Serbs and Montenegrins. Yeah.
Best we got.
That is essentially what happened. Is that the short of it is Tito is gone. There's nothing really holding us together. Hey, you see what's happening around the world as communist governments are being gradually weakened and losing and forming into now smaller separate countries that actually have control over their own affairs and they want to do things. We want to do that, said the Croatians, the Bosnians, and more. And the Serbians were like, no.
Sorry, I'm busy handling this.
Except the whole issue with the nationalist side was that it became less of a conflict of we want to maintain the Yugoslavian state, which, by the way, throughout this whole time, Serbia, I think until, I can't remember what year, but it was years after the conflict that Serbia didn't call itself Serbia. They still called themselves Yugoslavia.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So they launch, the nationalists within it gradually take power, and then from there launch an ethnic cleansing to basically wipe out all these different peoples. That from there, they want to then, instead of just maintain the Yugoslavia state, they actively try to turn Yugoslavia into just Serbian.
Okay, yeah, so that's kind of important because from the perspective of knowing that the Balkan Wars existed but not knowing what they were about, finding out that they were involving extermination, to put it as mildly as possible.
It's all ethnic cleansing. Aiden.
Yeah,
it's always been ethnic cleansing.
Not what I would have expected.
Yep.
Not something that I would have thought was involved.
We here in the 21st century have a very rose-colored glasses view of how common ethnic cleansing was throughout history. It was pretty much just what you did.
And it was very messy because a lot of this was divided along ethnic lines and religious lines because you had Catholic Croatians, you had Muslim Bosnians, and you had Eastern Orthodox Serbians. And depending upon either, it oftentimes was less of a determining factor of what is your nationality and more so what is your ethno-religious nationality as part of it, because the religion was a core part usually of one's national identity as well. And that got really messy really fast. Yes. To describe the Yugoslavian war would be a whole other episode by itself. Yeah. There's no way to really go into all that. The short of it is hundreds of thousands of people die. In fact, hold on. What was the exact number? I know that it's at least 300,000. God, what was it in here? You need to go to the top from there and find this. Yugoslav war, location and result. Oh, no. So there's at least 300 casualties. It's 130 to 140,000 people die. You know, much nicer.
Casual.
And then 4 million people get displaced. So 4 million.
Sounds like a success to me.
So 4 million people lose their homes, and over 100,000 of them die. Majority of which are civilians.
All those people who were displaced, where did they go?
It's usually internal displacement, as they would be displaced into other parts. Like, just because you are displaced from...
That's
like,
crazy. You're telling me that when a civil war happens, people don't have to, travel thousands of miles to a completely different continent. They can just resolve their problems at home.
Sometimes, again,
Interesting.
it really does depend. Again, I know what you're saying, but it does really depend in this. Internal displacement...
No, I'm just saying it sounds like Europe went, no, you guys can sort yourselves out. And then 20 years later, we're like, no, everybody from Sudan can come here.
For some ports, yeah. That's why there's big cultural shifts now in Europe that are stopping that.
Oh,
So we'll see how that goes. Ugh.
What a reversal.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of reversals are happening.
Yeah, but
Anyway, now that we've gotten into the horrible amounts of genocide and everything else that have occurred, tell us, Aiden Mattis, how will Balkanization save the United States?
you really teed me up there.
I really did tee you up. Now for Patreon.
Yeah, because we're probably about to say some things that might get us in trouble on YouTube.
Oh, without a doubt.
Oh boy. All right.
I'm excited to hear them, though.
Yeah, well, if you're on the YouTube side, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. We hope to see you over on Patreon if you're willing to give it a shot. There is a free Patreon segment up by now.
Yeah, from the previous episode to this
Yeah, if
one.
you head over there, you will get an example of what a Patreon segment looks like for free over on there. So check it out. And without further ado, so...
Like, imagine the caste system of India. Now imagine it worse.
Oh.
So there's a lot of
Attacking
them happening.
buses with ice on them to only find out later that it was Ice Cube's bus.
That did happen.
That
We're at the point where the gunshots have started ringing out. We need to
with
step
much
back.
greater
We need to
frequency than they were 5 or 6 years ago.
We need huge ones.
Even though what you say is accurate, an average Cornishman or Welshman will punch you in the face for you saying that.
Well, you guys all need to listen to these 3 20-something-year-old white men because we're right and you're wrong.